Please help support the channel by visiting our Amazon store, affiliate link below. Hey, what's going on everybody? My name is Matt Jarbo, this is the Mundane Matt channel, and the battle over Title IX has officially begun. Colleges are striking back against Betsy DeVos, kind of pulling back on the Dear Colleague letter that Obama administration popped out in 2011, essentially doing away with due process for students, accused of sexual assault on college campuses. Now, many of you out there are probably thinking, but Matt, how can you dare make that claim? How can you ever claim that the victim shouldn't be believed? I'm not saying that at all. I'm simply pointing out that due process is a thing, and a thing that should be protected across the board. You cannot ask for equality and justice without due process. We are a nation of laws and rules that have to be followed. What Title IX did through the Dear Colleague letter was almost get rid of those. Students weren't allowed to cross-examine witnesses. They weren't allowed to get witness testimonies or even speak to some of their friends to get their statement. They were blocked and bound and silenced and censored from trying to defend their case. Why? Because the school didn't want to be labeled as being a rape haven, so to speak, and they also didn't want to lose their federal funding, which is basically what was on the line if they didn't start forcing Title IX even further down college students' throats. And yeah, this is more of a men's issue than it is a women's issue, but it ultimately boils down to equal rights. And that's something that Betsy DeVos is actually arguing for in this case. And so it really strikes me as odd that universities that are trying to fight back against this are arguing against due process simply because of who the messenger is. And that is really freaking pathetic. So it says here that University of Colorado rejects revised Title IX guidelines on sexual misconduct. The University of Colorado has announced its refusal to abide by the reformed Title IX guidelines recently issued by the Trump administration's Department of Education. Instead, the university will stick to the scrapped Obama-era guidelines when overseeing campus tribunals on rape and sexual assault. Yeah, let's see how long that one lasts. Because how many schools have been sued by students who have been ejected, expelled after a kangaroo court Title IX investigation? I mean, it's happened time and time again, and we're learning about more of these every single year. And so it's kind of like, yeah, wait for you. You can fight back now, but it's not going to last forever. Per the Daily Camera on Sunday, college officials stated their beliefs in the university's existing process, which they believe provides fairness to all involved in campus sexual assault investigations issued under the Obama administration. The Title IX legislation has been compared to a kangaroo court and highly criticized for not providing due process to individuals accused of crimes. And in many cases, it's true, it hasn't. Now, here's to be fair. I don't know the University of Colorado's process for this. It does differ and vary from school to school. So they could have something that they do deem to be fairer across the board than maybe other schools do, which is why they're fighting back. But at the same time, they should really take a long look at what exactly they're fighting against. If you have someone, you know, in a position of power, in this case, Betsy DeVos being the Secretary of Education, saying, hold on a minute, there's problems with this. It's not accurate. We need to, you know, pull it back and scale it back in order to get better fairness and due process. And they're going like, no. It just goes to show you that where things have gone in terms of this hysteria, because that's quite frankly what it is, it's hysteria, is that they are so afraid of trying to push back against this narrative for the sake of equality and due process that they're afraid of getting the blowback from other people that are going to only hurt them. This is what they fear. Let me just give you a bit of advice here, University of Colorado. Look at the University of Missouri. After the protests from 2015, they've lost a lot of students. They've lost millions of dollars. Students aren't going there. Their football season this year is a dumpster fire. They are in a very bad state because of this kind of situation. Evergreen State College, very similar things happening there. Enrollment is down, money coming in is down, and they're hurting because of the actions of the administration when it comes to dealing with these particular issues. When you let the inmates run the asylum, nothing good happens, and that's kind of what's happening here by wanting to reject this new Title IX revision. You should be wanting equality, wanting due process across the board. And if this makes it so a stronger burden of proof is needed, or due process is actually allowed, or God forbid, if there's an accusation of a crime, you just turn it over to the police because that's kind of their job, right? Then you would be all for this, don't you think? But anyway, let's continue here. As such, the university will not require the higher standard of evidence during these investigations as called for by the revised guidelines by the Education Secretary, Betsy DeVos. So yeah, higher standard of evidence that's needed. Apparently that's going to hurt the victim, but you know what? Screw the accused, because you know, you're guilty until proven innocent in this country, right? Exactly. Last Friday, DeVos rescinded the regulations from 2011 and 2014 that required universities to use a preponderance of evidence standard when investigating such claims. Instead, the new interim guidelines calls on colleges to use a clear and convincing evidence standard. Yeah, having a preponderance of evidence is definitely a lower standard of evidence. Having clear and convincing evidence is definitely the right course of action to have here. It's one of the things, one of the biggest annoyances that I have in this day and age with social media and everything else is the accusations fly off the handle all the time. And I think that does more to hurt actual victims than it does to help them. You know, you see this in different pockets of any industry. Someone will come out and say, 25 years ago, I was sexually assaulted by this person. I have no evidence to back any of it up, but that's what happened. And then everyone turns on that person who's been accused, even though there's no evidence to support this, because 25 years ago, you know, this is when they should have been reported. I'm not saying like, don't ever report it, but instead of going to social media, go to the cops. Go to the police, go to people who are equipped to handle this kind of stuff. Colleges are simply not, which is one of the reasons why they're holding on to the Obama administration Title IX. It goes on to say here that the interim guidance will help schools as they work to combat sexual misconduct and will treat students fairly. Schools must continue to confront these horrific crimes and behaviors head on. There will be no more sweeping them under the rug, but the process must also be fair and impartial, giving everyone more confidence in its outcome. Yeah. How about that? Like, you know, like how many times have we come across these stories? Have I reported on these stories? And you find out that, oh, students who have been accused of sexual misconduct or sexual assault didn't in fact do anything, right? You know, there was a case of the guy who was blackout drunk in his girlfriend's dorm room. Her roommate took advantage of him, then accused him of sexual assault, but he was drunk and he couldn't consent. He still was expelled from school, even though his lawyer was able to uncover text messages saying basically all of that, and he still wasn't allowed back in. Or what about the girl that decided to get into a three-way with two guys who wanted to spit roast her, and then she accused them of rape when a guy who she was interested in might have found out about it, and she didn't. Goes on to say, Valerie Simons, the Title IX coordinator at the University of Colorado, says that they have no plans to make any changes to its policies. One of the priorities has been a prompt, equitable, fair process for those accused of sexual violence and the victims. There will be no immediate changes to either our sexual misconduct policy or our OIEC policy. Another CU professor, Joanne Belknap, who designs courses on sexual harassment and gendered violence, told the Daily Caller that men who are accused of sexual misconduct are not treated unfairly in Title IX cases. She says here, I'm sure we can all find examples where certain people were treated unfairly. But this whole idea that somehow all these men on campus are at risk of being charged with something they didn't do is such a gross exaggeration of what the reality is. Except it's not. It's not. Not if you look at the numbers. Not if you look at how the data was obtained, especially through the RAINN statistics that they use in order to kind of create this hysteria on college campuses. It wasn't about whether or not women had been sexually assaulted on college campuses. It was about whether or not they feared they might be sexually assaulted on campuses. Not the same thing at all, but the statistic was then conflated into being the de facto, reason for calling it an epidemic on campuses when that's not the case whatsoever. And so it's sad that you even have to have this conversation. It's sad that in 2017, in current year, we're arguing for people who have been accused of a crime to get due process. They should always be allowed due process. Look, it doesn't matter whether or not they did it or didn't do it. Okay. Like I will point to cases where men have been falsely accused, but at the same time, I want you to realize that it does boil down to like, due process. It is an equality issue. It is very much an equality issue, and that is what's at stake here. Now, Belknap did criticize DeVos for stigmatizing victims of rape and sexual assault by issuing a new policy, which, yeah, okay, whatever. It's not stigmatizing victims. That's not going to stigmatize victims. False accusations stigmatize victims. If you have been accused of this kind of heinous crime, you should, for all reasons out there, defend yourself. I believe it's your civic duty to do so. And the reason why I say that is because then if you defend yourself, then if people out there who are trying to hurt you get caught, then people out there who might make those claims all willy-nilly might stop. Therefore, putting a claim that might come out there as being probably taken more seriously, right? And there are people out there that want to argue against that. Oh, well, if you come out and you make the claim, you know, like if you defend yourself, that's going to hurt people coming forward. A crime has the committer of the crime and the victim of the crime, the aggressor and the victim. And we need to protect due process, because if the person is truly guilty of the crime, we need to know beyond a reasonable doubt that they did it. And these kangaroo courts don't help. But it's unfortunate that the University of Colorado is pushing back, and not only them, but you have Senator Dianne Feinstein from California saying Secretary DeVos is putting the rights of the accused above those of sexual assault victims. Absolutely unconscionable. Saying here that I'll continue to work in the Senate to protect victims of sexual campus assault or campus sexual assault. We can't give up the fight. Asking for due process is not putting the rights of the accused above those of the victims. I cannot believe, like, this gives me a headache for how utterly ridiculous, and I'm just going to say bigoted that it is. It's bigoted and it's discriminatory. It's like, whether or not the person did the crime, if you accuse them of the crime, they should be entitled to the same amount of due process as anybody else. But because this culture in our society has placed such an emphasis on, if you're accused, you're automatically guilty. You know, it doesn't matter what the damage is. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. Just if you're accused, you did it. You know, and then they double down on this kind of stuff. It just boggles my mind. It boggles my mind that this is where things are at. And people might accuse me of being like all right-wing, like, oh, you're just right-wing for saying this. I'm not right-wing for saying this. I'm a centrist. I'm a moderate. I look at something like this and I'm all like, this is not equality. This is not right. You cannot sit there and argue against due process. You cannot do that. That doesn't work that way. But here we are in a reality where this is happening. Whereas had it been Hillary Clinton, Secretary of Education, that might have looked at the same issue and pulled it back a little bit. And I mean, that would never happen. But I'm saying, like, just in case, if it ever did, the response would not be the same. The response would be no equality, due process, all those things. But because it's DeVos, they're going to shout it down. Hey guys, that wraps up this video. If you'd like to leave a comment, please do so below. I love to read your guys' input. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button. It really does help me in the YouTube algorithm. If you want to support the channel, there's the Amazon affiliate store, there's PayPal, there's Patreon, there's Bitcoin. And if you're bored and you want something else to watch, check out 3 Buck Theater up here. My name is Matt Jarbo. I will talk to you guys later. Have yourself a wonderful day. Peace out.